If you know me in real life, you know that sarcasm is my love language and that humor is the way to my heart. It's something that my whole family does. My dad is one of the most sarcastic people that I know and super witty and funny. My husband and I, that's how we communicate. We crack jokes all the time. And now even my 14-year-old son is like so on top of it, can slide a joke in anywhere, and his wit is so quick. But today's guest is not like Christine family funny. He's like really, really funny. Like gets paid for being funny for a living kind of thing. And he is one of the most interesting people because he's got this whole world that he does things. He's an entrepreneur, he's a venture investor and a speaker, but then he is also the CEO of Babylon Bee, one of the biggest, if not the biggest satire site right now. They just surpassed The Onion a while ago in engagement and traffic, which is fantastic. The Onion is kind of like the left's version of being funny in satire. And the Babylon Bee is, they'd say on the right, but really it's just like what's true, or what's poking fun of what the left does, and even the right they poke fun of too. And I say what's true because though it's not a real news website, humor is not funny if there's not actually truth to it. So you can read it and actually crack up at it, and you can laugh at, if you're on the right, you can laugh at yourself, and if you're on the left, you can laugh at yourself when you read their stuff. But they do an incredible job, and one topic they don't shy away from is abortion, and that's why I had Seth on and wanted to dive into this topic with him. But before we get into the episode, I want to share with you that he is going to be, and I just found out while we were recording this episode, he is a confirmed speaker for the National Pro-Life Summit that Students for Life puts on in January. We do it every year. It's one of the biggest pro-life events that you can go to. It is the day after the March for Life, so remember that if you can't remember the specific date, which is January 21st. Don't forget. But it is the day after the March for Life. So if you're in town in Washington, D.C., and you're sticking around for the rest of the weekend, which you should, come hang out with us and Seth Dillon, because he's going to be one of our speakers. But in the meantime, listen to this episode and see why you should come hang out with us at the Pro-Life Summit and why Seth is somebody you're going to want to hear speak. Seth, thanks so much for joining us today. It's a pleasure to have you. I'm going to try to be a little bit funny this episode, but it probably won't work. So you're going to have to do that for me. For those who aren't aware, give us a brief breakdown of what Babylon Bee is. Maybe these people live under a rock and they don't know what it is, but tell us what Babylon Bee is and kind of your path to purchasing Babylon Bee.
First of all, I'm Seth Dillon, CEO of the Babylon Bee. My pronouns are he, him. I'm wearing white pants and I'm a man. And I live on stolen land. I guess got to get those formalities out of the way. Yeah, the Bee is a satire publication. So we do news satire. It's just like The Onion. If your audience has heard of The Onion, they're probably the most well known over the years. Although we have kind of surpassed them now in traffic and engagement. So we're basically at this point the world's most popular satire site, which means we make funny fake news. Not with the intent to mislead, as they often charge us with, but with the intent to mock the insanity of the age and speak some truth to culture through humor.
So when you started to pursue the Bee, what was your interest there? Like, have you always had an interest in humor? Did you like try your hand at stand-up comedy? Was it something that you were just a fan of? What kind of pushed you into like seeking it out?
No stand-up comedy for me. I mean, I always had an interest in satire. I thought satire was an extremely effective way of communicating, basically cutting down bad ideas. It does it very effectively. Over the course of history, I think, at least in recent history, the political left has used satire extremely effectively on TV. With these late night shows, they have kind of dominated comedy, basically. And the Bee was an answer to that. I think, the Bee comes at the issues from a different perspective, a different worldview. There's different things that we value. We have a different take on what's true, what's good, and what's funny.
Right.
So, I think the Bee was really filling a void that was wide open for someone to step into. And so my interest in it was just that it was, the content was very good. It wasn't cheesy. It was legitimately funny. But it was playing the same game that the left was so good at playing. It was using mockery and ridicule and comedy to advance truths and to push back on bad ideas. So I was impressed with it and wanted to get involved any way I could. So I ended up working out a deal in 2018 with the founder of the Bee, Adam Ford, and I took over the site as its owner and CEO at that time. So I've been running it for the last 5 years.
Do you get involved in any of the articles and write the headlines at all anymore? Do you just kind of oversee it and you have all the funny people under you? Or do you do any of it?
I do, yeah. I mean, not a lot. I used to do a lot more than I do now. The business has just grown so dramatically that I'm less involved now in the collaborative kind of pitching process,
Sure.
as we call it. Just tossing out ideas and headlines. But yeah, a bunch of the headlines on the site are ones that I've written myself. Although I don't normally write the article, one of our staff writers will do that.
Gotcha. So you guys are growing. It's phenomenal. Your name has been thrown out there a lot. You've been in the headlines a lot lately. Elon Musk, that whole ordeal, Twitter. I looked on Twitter the other day. You guys are still banned, I'm assuming, because I hadn't seen an updated tweet. Has there been any new development in that? You guys are just holding firm on not posting again or deleting the tweet. And anybody listening who doesn't know, Babylon Bee tried to do something kind of mocking Rachel Levine as being the woman of the year, correct? And then you guys said man of the year.
Yeah, I mean, long story short, USA Today had done a piece naming some women of the year that they were honoring. And one of the ones that they honored as Woman of the Year was this transgender health admiral in the Biden administration, Rachel Levine. And so, we thought, what would be a funny take on this? Well, there'd be more truth to saying that Rachel Levine is Man of the Year than Woman of the Year, because that's just an identity, not an actual reality. And so, as a joke, we named Rachel Levine Man of the Year. And that runs afoul of these misgendering policies that they have on these platforms now. So they dinged us for hate speech. They said it was hateful conduct and we needed to delete the tweet if we wanted to stay on the platform. And after giving it some thought, we decided, no, we're not going to delete the tweet. Like, it's so ridiculous. It's a joke for one thing. It's got truth to it for another. And if they don't like it, they can delete it. Why do we have to delete it? Why do we have to delete it and say, you know what, we engaged in hateful conduct? Because that's what they make you do. They make you acknowledge that you did, in fact, engage in hateful conduct and basically say you're sorry and we won't do it again. We don't agree that that joke was hateful in any way. And in my opinion, I don't think that the truth is hateful and that speaking the truth is hateful. I think it's much more hateful and harmful and damaging to lie to somebody or affirm their lies than to speak the truth to them in love. Right. And so, or in jest. So, we decided it was something that would be worth taking a stand on, and at great cost to us. I mean, it's, I can't even tell you, I can't put a value on our Twitter presence, because not only do we have 1.5 million followers on there, but we have, that's how we've gotten connected to so many notable people. I mean, there's people in Congress who follow us on Twitter and interact with our stuff. It's how we've gotten connected with Joe Rogan and Elon Musk and people like that. So not only do we reach a wide audience, but we also reach very prominent, influential people who have become fans of our content as a result of that. So to be sidelined from that forum is very costly to us. But I think it's, we've been off Twitter now since March, and we're still refusing to delete the tweet.
Good for you. That's a long time, but I'm proud of you guys for standing firm. I know the truth is only offensive to those who don't want to hear it, but it's a loving thing to do, to tell the truth. But speaking of Elon Musk, that's a huge, massive name. I'm sure that has helped you guys a little bit with you being banned on Twitter, because now he was talking about you guys. People go look you up. What does it feel like to kind of be, I mean, he's such a huge name and such a huge player in the world in general. What does it feel like to be part of the driving force for the reason that we say that's the reason that he wanted to purchase Twitter?
It was kind of surreal, honestly. The way the whole thing played out. Musk had been making a lot of statements. He had been kind of looking into whether or not he should do something with Twitter for some time. He was polling his audience and talking to them about whether or not they think Twitter is in fact a free speech platform. He's called himself a free speech absolutist. And I think he really recognizes. I don't know if you watched our interview with him when he came on our podcast, but
I did.
he talked about wokeness and how harmful that ideology is, and how it's divisive, exclusionary, and hateful, and how it gives mean people an excuse to be cruel, well armored, and false virtue. I mean, the way he spoke about wokeness was so dead on, in my opinion, and powerful. He's got really strong opinions on the direction that things are heading in. And, it's wokeness that's driving a lot of this censorship and the suppression of other ideas. It's wokeness that has people saying things like, men can get pregnant, and banning people who say, no, they can't.
Yeah.
That's what's driving all of this. And so I think he sees that. He sees it as being very problematic, and I think he's right. And so, when we got banned and he saw that, he had heard about it and asked us about that. I think it was possibly a tipping point for him where he's like, this is ridiculous. I can't take credit for the whole thing, but we did factor into his decision-making process that this is really a real problem. People can't even make jokes anymore on these platforms. They are not free. And so, yeah, I mean, it was surreal to be caught up in that. I never expected when I got involved in the Babylon Bee, I thought it would be a really fun and funny project. I didn't expect that it would turn into what it is, that it would be the world's most popular satire site, and that we would be engaged in this battle for the preservation of freedom and the restoration of sanity. I mean, I didn't realize what it would turn into, but we're honored to be a part of it, and we hope that we can continue to influence people like him that have a lot of power, that have a lot of persuasion, that have a lot of resources to do something about this stuff and push back on it.
Yeah, he's such a big person and big name out there that I feel like it just is continuing to elevate you guys, and it's almost like God's hand is on you guys, and it's just pushing you into more and more success. Speaking of him being on your podcast, I did watch it because I was like, holy smokes, this is crazy cool. And I watched it, and he's such an interesting person. Like, you guys are saying some really funny stuff, but he like barely would even smirk. Like, it was hard to get him to laugh. Are you sitting there looking like, do you like us or not? You say we're funny, but like you don't actually like chuckle or laugh. What was that like?
That was tough. I mean, I don't do a lot of these interviews. I wasn't going to miss that one. I wanted to be a part of that one. Totally. And yeah, I threw out some jokes that I thought were funny, and he just kind of pondered them. He acted like he was contemplating something, and then would go on with another thought or respond to it as if I'd said something serious. And that's just his personality. He does, if you notice in the course of that interview, he laughs at his own jokes quite a bit. So he knows when he's telling a joke, and he likes his own jokes, and it is tough. That was one of the harder parts of the interview was kind of sticking with it and staying the course and continuing to try to be funny or crack jokes when he wasn't really responding to them. But he does think we're funny. He's just, he has funny ways of showing it.
I feel like some of the most intelligent people sometimes have this like a little bit of quirkiness about him, and maybe he's laughing in his head. We just don't see it coming out. Speaking of the other big names, you already mentioned him. Joe Rogan has talked about you guys and basically like slammed woke comedians and said that their careers are garbage, and really praised what you're doing. Is there any Babylon Bee, Seth Dillon, Joe Rogan collabs coming in the future? Has he reached out to you guys at all?
I don't know about collabs. I am going to be on his show coming up here in August.
Amazing.
So yeah, I'm going to do an interview with him, but no collaborations in the near future. I think Rogan is interesting. He's a really thoughtful guy. He likes to have genuine conversations and ask real questions and try to get to the truth of things. Mm-hmm. He's not a far-right extremist like they're trying to, paint him.
Of course.
But, one of the reasons I respect him so much, he, Bill Maher, Dave Chappelle, there's people out there recognizing that, again, to go back to wokeness, I mean, wokeness, for one thing, is like, it's hysterical. it's so stupid, and so many of these ideas are just so outlandish and extreme and laughable. Like, we never would have believed, for example, that that kids would be taught that kids would be sitting down like and having drag queens giving them like lessons. Drag queens? Why are drag queens sitting in front of kids and performing for them at, quote, family friendly drag shows? And all this
And not just
pronoun
reading
stuff.
to them at these things, but like sexually performing for
Right,
them.
right, as if they were performing for an adult audience.
Yeah.
The kind of stuff that's happening, like, this is the kind of stuff that deserves to be made fun of. It's so extreme and it's so harmful that we should absolutely be making fun of it. I mean, comedians, I think, can actually play a role in shaping the thinking of younger people and generations by mocking what deserves to be mocked and chipping away at its appeal, right? If you mock something, you chip away at its appeal. If you affirm it, if people who are like respected by young people, if comedians are out there affirming this garbage and saying that it's good and not making fun of it, then they're doing young people a disservice. So I don't know. There's been a few people. Bill Maher said that he came to our defense and said that the Bee is just doing satire. They shouldn't be silenced for doing this. They just have a different perspective. And he did make jokes about us too. He's like, I thought Christianity itself was satire. Why is there a Christian satire site?
Yeah, I saw
which
that.
is a poke at our religion. Whatever. He makes fun of religion. That's fine. He can make fun of us. We can make fun of them. But he respects our right to exist. And Rogan similarly is like, look, wokeness is the funniest stuff out there right now. That's why the Bee is doing so well, is because they're making fun of what deserves to be made fun of. And I think he's right. I think that this is one of the things that that maybe people don't see. I don't know, especially comedians have lost sight of it. The late night comedians, SNL, they are propping up and promoting the popular narratives. They're propping up and promoting them instead of making fun of them. And that's not the comedian's job. Is to try to poke holes in this stuff and mock it. And it's crazy to me that they've become mouthpieces for the propaganda. So I think it's one of the reasons that we're so successful. Not just because people like Musk are engaging with us or talking about us. That certainly doesn't hurt. But because we are actually doing the comedian's job, and people are hungry for real comedy. There are a lot of people who find this stuff absurd and want to laugh at it. And so, anyone who's willing to make those jokes, those jokes that'll get you banned, the ones that you're not supposed to make, they're going to build an audience either on or off these platforms.
No, I completely agree, because like you said, it's not just because Musk is talking about you that you're having success. It's because you're actually genuinely funny, because Musk wouldn't be talking about you if you weren't funny and you weren't doing well at what you do at satire. And you have Bill Maher talking about you, Joe Rogan, and all these people saying like, no, they're actually funny. And what I find interesting is, just like you said, Bill Maher, they can make fun of us if they want. And when I see something funny about conservatives or, even pro-life people, I kind of chuckle at it too, because a lot of times there's truth in humor. Maybe they say a bunch of pro-life people look like a bunch of Little House on the Prairie people. Well, sometimes we do. So I feel like we can recognize that things are funny, even if it's about us, but a lot of times they don't know how to recognize things are funny. Speaking of like being able to make fun of things and how we should make fun of woke culture and poke holes in it, I want to read a couple of the Babylon Bee headlines regarding the issue of abortion, so everyone listening can kind of understand what I mean when I say like you don't want to miss out on Babylon Bee. And I wrote a few down that I thought were pretty funny. Obviously, Senator Warren has a lot to say about pregnancy resource centers lately. This one says, Senator Warren leaps out just in time to swap prenatal vitamins away from woman leaving pregnancy center, which is hilarious because, like, literally we're just helping people. Here's diapers, here's vitamins, here's help with your rent, here's help with finding a job. Right. There was another one about Senator Warren, but you guys are a hoot. Woman starting to think company offering to kill her kid doesn't have her best interest at heart, with all the companies who are now trying to pay for women's abortions. Planned Parenthood backs new Don't Say Baby bill. That one's genius. Absolutely hilarious. Let's see. At SCOTUS, abortion hearing At SCOTUS abortion hearing, Biden administration calls expert witness Satan. Texas woman wishes there were some activity she could abstain from to be sure she won't get pregnant. You guys are just, I mean, like, all of this is so on point. And I know that it's not to mislead people, but like,
Right.
it's actually like true. Like these things are like, they could be legitimate headlines and be real.
Yeah, we go. I mean, this is one of those topics that we can be pretty savage on, just because it's a big deal. I mean, you know what a big deal it is. I mean, and it's near and dear to our hearts. I remember, it's not one of the ones that you just read, but it was like back when Bill Cosby was going through his trial and whatever for assaulting people. We did a headline about how Planned Parenthood was coming to Bill Cosby's defense, saying sexual assault is only 3% of what he does. And
Sounds about right.
and I mean, obviously, this is what Planned Parenthood says, is that, oh well, abortion only makes up for 3% of our revenue or 3% of our services. What is that number?
Yeah.
3% comes from something like
3%,
that.
yeah.
It's only 3% of what we do. Well, it's like, it's still wrong. That doesn't make it okay. If Bill Cosby only spends 3% of his time sexually assaulting women, does that mean that it's okay? Of course not.
Sure. Yeah.
And I think that satire gives you a way of exposing, the wrongness and showing just how crazy these positions are, where it's really jarring, and people read that and they're like, "Wow, that was pretty savage." So, yeah, I mean, I think that we've managed to hit that issue pretty successfully, and it's a tough one because it's not easy to joke about whenever you're dealing with issues, especially hot button issues, when you're dealing with things like guns, for example, gun violence or abortion. You're talking about really heavy issues that weigh heavily on people's hearts. There's victims involved. There's a lot of pain in your audience around those issues, and so it's hard to joke about them. And this is one of the things that people need to understand with satire, is that we're not always trying to be like laugh out loud funny. In some cases, satire is very serious business, and you're trying really to make a point that deserves to be made. And it's not really, you're not making light of the issue, I guess is the point I'm trying to say.
I love that you guys don't back down from this issue, because it is, as somebody who's, been in and around politics, both you and I have been around this world, and I feel like this is the issue that is the most controversial. This is the one that even politicians are like, I don't know if I want to talk about this one, because it is so divisive. And I love that you take a stand. And consistently, when I was on the Babylon Bee, there's tons of topics or articles about this. And I know you guys have Not the Bee now, so you are now doing real news as well as satire. But why is the abortion issue so important to you?
Well, I mean, I think it's one of those things that has to be, we have to strongly resist culture's pressure to normalize barbaric, savage things. And I think, the attempt to do that with abortion, you see people using these euphemisms like, calling babies parasites, for example. Parasites. And of course it's okay to get rid of a parasite that's feeding off of your body. It's like, you're talking about a human baby. And we're using this dehumanizing language to justify acting in our own interests, doing something for our own benefit. And that's exactly what was done with slavery, for example. Dehumanizing language was used at the expense and exploitation of humans, and for someone's own benefit, for their own selfish benefit. They wanted to profit, or there's so many parallels between abortion and slavery. This is our modern day issue. It's our modern day human rights issue, where we have so many people trying to argue that this is okay, by completely lying and misleading people to believe that these are not human babies that have their own rights, that have a right to live. What's remarkable about it to me is that there's so much concern, supposedly, about harmful misinformation, right? It's one of the reasons that we faced so much pushback from the social networks, is because we're spreading harmful misinformation. People could believe our jokes. It's just insane to me that the same people who say that kind of stuff promote so much harmful misinformation about abortion. They promote the idea. For one thing, they never talk about adoption as being an option. Right. They mislead you about adoption. They mislead you about these clinics and what these health clinics are doing. These women's clinics that are serving so many women in difficult situations. They mislead you about literally everything. They use dehumanizing language and euphemisms to cover up what they're really saying. So there's all these ideas that are really actually harmful misinformation that are costing lives. And in any way that you can push back on that, I think, is beneficial to society. Either you're doing it with satire, or you're doing it, with the work that you're doing. That's where the real harmful misinformation is. And so, to me, it's near and dear to my heart, just because not because the issue has affected me personally, but because it's one of the serious moral issues of our time.
Absolutely. I couldn't have said it better myself. I think what we're seeing right now is society essentially degrading. But speaking of misinformation, they're also misinforming on the issue of abortion itself. Seth, something I want everybody to know about you that is listening right now, or anybody who might be watching, when I did a fundraiser recently, and this was in my own personal capacity, it wasn't with Students for Life. I did a fundraiser with a woman whose husband told her that she was going to leave him, or he was going to leave her, if she gave birth to their fourth child. They were struggling financially, and he said, I don't want any part of this. You have to abort this baby. She said no, decided to keep the baby, and he left her. He did. He kept his word and he left. And soon after, her 18-month-old went into the hospital and had to have surgery. And I did a baby shower for her, and I do this for a lot of women. And usually it's between $2,500, $3,000 worth of stuff for the baby shower. And for this specific woman, my heart went out to her a little more, and I decided to do a $1 challenge. And I asked all of my followers for $1, and you gave well over $1. And helping us reach, we ended up raising $13,000 for her, which, isn't going to change their life forever, but it's definitely going to help give her a little bit of a cushion, especially when she has a little child who's recovering from having surgery recently and has to have another surgery coming up. So I want people to know that you actually care and you walk out your beliefs. And I'm so honored to know somebody like you, who is a man who's willing to speak up when men are told that they're not allowed to have an opinion. And seeing that when I saw it on Venmo, I was like, that's really cool. I think I even messaged you. I was like, thank you. That's awesome.
Now, wait a minute. What do you mean? They did used to say, no uterus, no opinion, right? But
Yep.
What about trans women, that don't have a uterus? Are they allowed to have an opinion on this? Trans women are women. Are their voices?
Trans women can only have an opinion if they agree with abortion.
Right. Then it's okay.
That's
women really can only have an opinion if they agree with abortion. I mean,
exactly.
This idea.
Exactly. I'm a woman hater.
Yeah. You see the same stuff. It's the same kind of dishonesty that happens with the COVID stuff. It's like, well, why do we still have to wear masks on planes or something? And they're like, well, I'm not you have to ask a doctor. The doctors will tell you why. But doctors disagree about this stuff. You can have doctors on both sides of these issues. Women disagree about this stuff. The idea, and this is the thing. This is where they're so dishonest. When you put forward an argument, a pro-life argument, for example, like it's wrong to intentionally kill an innocent human. Abortion intentionally kills an innocent human. Therefore, abortion is wrong. What difference does it make whether or not I have a uterus when I put forward that argument? How does my being male have anything to do with the truth or falsity of either of the premises in that argument? It has nothing to do with it. They're either true or they're not. So you have to actually deal with the facts and not try to use distractions, red herrings, or ad hominem attacks on the person advancing the argument. Either of those things are true. Either it's wrong to intentionally kill an innocent human, or it isn't. And it has nothing to do with whether or not you're a man or a woman. So, those arguments are dumb. Those are some of the dumbest arguments that they make. And so, I'm not afraid to speak out, even though I don't have a uterus. And I'm happy to support the causes however I can.
I always see that mindset requires logic, and they don't have a lot of that on their side. Seth, before we go, I have one question that I always end with. If you could give one piece of advice to those listening, speaking out is basically what I want to encourage everybody to do when they listen to this show. Some people are uncomfortable doing it. Obviously, you're a little more bold. I've been doing this a little while. I've gained boldness over the years. What piece of advice would you give to somebody listening who's just stepping into starting to speak out about their beliefs or whatever they're passionate about?
Well, it's tough because when you speak when you speak the truth boldly, people are going to try to shut you up, and they're going to try to take the rug out from underneath you and trip you up, tear you down, cancel you. And I think it's important that people understand that unless and until large numbers of people are no longer cowering in fear about speaking the truth, that nothing is going to change. I say this all the time when I give talks, that when we censor ourselves, we're doing the tyrant's work for him, and we need to take that power away that we're giving to these platforms, to the people that disagree with us. Look, if they're going to enforce their ideology and their terms of service and shut everybody up that speaks out, that disagrees with them, the answer is not to dance around that and avoid saying the offensive things that could get you banned. The answer is to make them ban millions of us, make them ban themselves into irrelevance. We all need to be standing up. When you're standing up and voicing your opinion on your own, and everyone else is afraid to, you're an outlier. You're easy to crush. You're easy to identify. You're easy to silence. And that's why, when people ask me whether or not they should do anything or say anything, I always encourage them. I tell them, the more that we muzzle ourselves, the more that we give them this power, and the less likely it's ever going to change. And so, there are people who've been willing to put their lives on the line for freedom. We can be willing to risk our Twitter accounts and our Facebook and Instagram accounts to speak the truth boldly, and defend it and defend life. So I encourage people that, even though it's going to come at a cost, and we're facing costs, being off of Twitter is very costly to us as a business, but it's still the right thing to do. And hopefully if you do the right thing, you'll embolden other people, and the next thing you know, there'll be an army and not just one outlier.
Yep. I agree that I mean, like, you're preaching to the choir right there. And I hope that everybody listening is like, oh my gosh, this is amazing.
Do you have one more minute? Because I brought up the issue of harmful misinformation and abortion.
Yeah.
Since I'm on a pro-life podcast here, can I read you some notes I jotted down on what harmful misinformation the pro-abortion crowd is putting out there? Because they love to come after us for harmful misinformation. But these are all examples of pro-choice. I do not like calling it that. Harmful misinformation.
Pro-abortion.
Harmful misinformation is telling a woman that abortion is a decision about her body when another body and life is at stake. Harmful misinformation is calling a baby a clump of cells. Harmful misinformation is calling abortion health care. I say this all the time. Abortion is health care the way rape is lovemaking. It is not health care. Harmful misinformation is telling women that abortion, not child rearing, is empowering. Harmful misinformation is presenting abortion, not adoption, as the best answer to unwanted pregnancy. Harmful misinformation is telling women they're better off living with the guilt of killing their preborn children than coping with financial hardship. Harmful misinformation is the claim that we don't know when life begins. Harmful misinformation is the claim that saving sex for marriage is shameful or foolish. Harmful misinformation is describing a procedure that intentionally ends a life as being, quote, safe. I mean, the list could go on and on and on.
Woo! Preach it. Oh my gosh. That is amazing. And all accurate. Truly, a baby is not a clump of cells. We know that. And unfortunately, women oftentimes learn that the hard way when they go through an abortion and they're told just to flush it so they don't see it. But sometimes they do see it and they see the baby there. So we know that it's not a clump of cells. And if it is a clump of cells, so are you and
right.
I. But everything you said is true. And they have to misinform. They have to manipulate. They have to lie in order to push abortion. I remember when I told my son about what abortion actually was, he asked me, and he immediately started crying. He's like, well, why would anybody do that? And I feel like you have to lie to people and manipulate them to get them on your side, to become pro-abortion, because children are inherently pro-life. They see an ultrasound, and even though it's still kind of fuzzy, they can tell you that that's a baby. In order to change their mind, you have to do some manipulating there. And that's a lot of what you're talking about with that misinformation right there.
And it's harmful because it literally costs lives. I mean, we're not talking about, this is not just like, it's not innocuous, you know, these aren't just like little misleading statements that don't have consequences. These are outright lies that cost lives. And so, you know, if we're going to have concern as a culture for harmful misinformation, let's start here.
Right. Let's call out real misinformation and all misinformation. You have 2 young boys, so you know exactly how valuable these children are inside the womb and outside of the womb. And speaking of your family, I do have one last question. Okay, everybody thinks you're funny, and everybody thinks the bee's funny, right? But the true test is, does your wife think you're funny? Like, does she laugh at your jokes, or does she roll your eyes and like go to bed?
She really wants to act like I'm not, but I do get her laughing quite a bit. And I do honestly, if I'm being honest, I steal her jokes sometimes. She's pretty funny. My wife is funny, and every now and then she'll say something really funny, and I'm like, man, that would make a great caption on my next Instagram post, and I'll steal her joke and use it. So we keep each other laughing, which is good.
I love that. My husband, everybody thinks he's funny, but I do the like, babe, stop. You got to stop. But he actually is a huge fan of you too. I had him follow you mostly just for your captions, because your captions are so fire. I was like, you have to follow him. He's freaking
Some of them
hilarious.
are from my wife.
So he follows you too and is a big fan. He was trying to give me some, like, he was like, you should play a game with Seth and do like, is this a real headline or is this not? And he was like trying to give me fake headlines and come up with them. He's like, I could be the next writer for the Bee. And I had to tell him last night, I was like, go to bed. Seriously, just go to bed. Okay, I know I keep saying last question, but like this is like the legitimate last question, last topic, talking point here. I just found out that you're actually coming to the Students for Life National Pro-Life Summit in January. I had the honor of going last year for the first time. It was incredible seeing thousands of students there listening and wanting to learn about life. And we had Vice President Mike Pence there. Last time we had Michael Knowles there. And what I loved about Michael Knowles is he inserted humor, which is something that you're very good at as well. So we're really excited to have you, and looking forward to you being at your first National Pro-Life Summit. I'm
looking forward to that too. I mean, I love any opportunity to talk to students, and you know, because students they're hungry for the truth, and they're still at an age, you know, they don't have a lot of life experience under their belt. They're still pretty impressionable when it comes to you know, soaking up these ideas and what they're going to believe and what they're going to value. And I think that, you know, any opportunity to talk to them about the value of life and reinforcing that in a culture that's devaluing it so much, and finding ways to inject humor into that, you know, I think it's going to be fun and interesting, and I love engaging with students about topics like this, because I don't think there's anything more important than reaching them before they go out into the world with these ideas and showing, you know, ridicule. One of our missions is to ridicule bad ideas, right? If I could summarize our mission statement, that's what it would be: ridicule bad ideas. And you know, abortion is a bad idea, and the arguments for it are bad arguments, and young people need to see that and hear, you know, exactly what the issues are with these arguments, and so, you know, I bring a unique flavor to it using the Bee's voice, and I think they'll enjoy it.
I hope you bring some of the headlines that I read today and more of them, because I think the students will absolutely love it. And you're right, children, students, whether it's high school, college, they really are our future, and we need to be pouring into them and investing into them. So we're really excited to have you, and look forward to seeing you in January.
Looking forward to it too. Thank you.
But Seth, thank you so much for coming on. It's a pleasure. We really enjoyed having you, and look forward to hopefully doing something with you and Students for Life again.
Thank you. I enjoyed it.